when you wake up and you've got $24 left to your name and you can't even get to it because it's frozen. That's a bad day. It really is.
Hello, and welcome to the Look Up Mindset podcast. I'm your host, author Heidi Siefkes. In today's episode, we welcome a very special guest and peer author, Donald Payseur. Welcome, Donald.
How you doing, Heidi? Good to see you.
Oh, it's nice to see you too. I'm so excited to learn more about your story. I've already been reading your Flying High book, and I'm interested to get more tidbits from you today. So
Good. Yeah, well, there's a lot to talk about. Now, I tell you what, it's really an exciting book, and it's also created a life of of learning and experiences. It's what it's all about. So I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
you're very welcome. So I do this for selfish reasons. I let the guest self-introduce because I read your bios before you come on, but typically someone will slide something in there that I don't know about you. So the floor is yours to introduce yourself, Donald.
Well, thank you very much. I'm Donald R. Payseur. I'm a pilot, entrepreneur, a faithful believer, and the author of the book Flying High, how everything I learned about faith, life, and business, I learned from the cockpit. I'm 68 years old. I've been flying all my life. I've been an entrepreneur all my life. And I believe that life is about failure and looking up and learning about what mistakes you've made in the past so you don't have to make them again.
Isn't that the truth? It's all about failures and learning from them. The most common question I get is, how do I find these extraordinary human beings that are guests on the show? And I tell people life is all about timing and connections. And
Yeah, it is.
a mutual connection, Melissa Hale was my former boss at GoGo Business Aviation.
Okay.
And I earned that job not only because my panache in communications, marketing, and storytelling, but also my other half was a pilot. So I had the insider's track to business aviation and all the acronyms that go with being a pilot: PIC, SIC, FBO, IFR, all this stuff. So
Line up and wait, cleared for takeoff.
wheels up. So
Yep.
without further ado, now let's get into the meat and potatoes. Let's set the scene for your story. And yes, we are in 2026, but we need to press rewind to your childhood. So could you take us to where it all began?
Sure. I was raised in a small town called Gastonia, North Carolina, and it was just a dusty cotton mill town. And we lived near the Gastonia airport. And when I was 12 years old, I just grew this fascination with aviation. And as the planes would go over, I just stop what I'm doing, look up, and then think about those planes. And I went to my dad and I said, "Dad, will you take me flying?" Now, my dad was the type of person where you used to ask for something. He wouldn't just give it to you. He'd make you earn it. And so he kind of really, the term putting skin in the game was long before I was doing that, long before it was a term. And so Dad came back and he said, "Look, son, I tell you what, you go earn $100 and we'll use that money and I'll take you flying." Now, in 1969, $100 was like $1,000. And that's a lot of money for a 12-year-old kid to get. But I had a gas can, a lawnmower, and I just went out and started cutting people's yards for $3 a yard. $3. Now, you think about that. And I built that $100, and Dad took me flying.
Who was the man who took you up for your first flight?
Well, the guy was Red McCord. And I'm going to tell you, back in those days, aviation, back in the 60s, the senior pilots were World War II flying pilots, Korean War. I mean, they were cowboys. Okay. But Red, being 12 years old, he put me in that plane and we didn't go up and just circle the airport and land. He took me on an hour and a half flight and we went all over Western North Carolina and he let me have the controls and he was such a incredible man. And when I landed, the hook was set. I was going to be a pilot. Now, 12 years old, you know, you're growing up and it seems like yeah, it takes forever to grow up. But when I went away, went to school, got a job, lived in California, moved back to Gastonia when I was 25 years old, and that bug bit me. And so I decided to take flying lessons. I went back to Gastonia, the same airport, started taking flying lessons. The flight instructor I had then, he was a great guy, but he was extremely busy. So I felt like I was a cog in the wheel. And he had just soloed me. Now, soloing is when you train for that moment when the flight instructor says, okay, I'm going to see if you're capable to fly this airplane. I'm getting out and you're going to take off and land 3 times. And that's a huge milestone for becoming a pilot. So we did that. And with 14 hours, I soloed. And then a few days after that, I went to my flight instructor and he was too busy to fly with me. He goes, I said, well, can you sign me off and let me just do a solo flight and I'll stay in the pattern or, you know, something simple. He did, but I wasn't ready for that. And so I got in the plane, took off. 10 minutes after I got in the air, I knew I was in trouble because the sky was closing in, clouds were coming, the rain, and with 14 hours, I got caught in the clouds and the rain with absolutely no training at all. So what happened was I called the Charlotte flight departure and told him that I was a student pilot. And the guy said, well, you need to climb to avoid terrain. And I panicked and I pulled the yoke back all the way back, pulled the plane into a stall, and then just started falling. I mean, and while I was doing that, I held the mic open and I was screaming at the top of my lungs. And then when I busted out of the clouds, I was about 2 or 3 seconds away from hitting the mountain and I could see it and I was able to maneuver and get myself back to Gastonia and land the airplane. And that's the most incredible thing that ever happened to me to this day was that.
Petrifying, but you're thankful that the air traffic controller was able to get you to the safe altitude, but it was almost everything that you could have done wrong. It happened and it was recorded.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, and you know, in aviation, you have certain frequencies, and I was on departure. Now, Charlotte was a busy airport, always has been. And when you open up the mic and you're screaming, every pilot that's on that frequency in that sector of airspace is going to hear you scream. So it was terrifying. It was humiliating, and it was just something that really changed my life. So I gave up aviation until about a year. And then I met a guy and I don't know where Scott came from. His name was Scott Williams. But Heidi, sometimes people come in your life and I believe that it's the providence of God. Okay. God chooses your destination. And I don't know. I still can't remember where I met this guy, but he said, Don, he goes, I tell you what, if you could just trust me, I will make you a pilot. And that's what he did. 3 days a week, 5-hour blocks of ground school, sitting across, talking about it, flying. And in 7 short months, I got my pilot's license.
That's a tremendous feat to not only master the ground school and the techniques of flying, but also the emotional component, the mental and emotional control to get over that trauma of
Oh, yeah.
a near-death experience, an almost crash into a mountain.
Exactly. And I tell you what, I mean, I really at first didn't want to, but I just felt, Scott explained to me, he goes, I'm not going to teach you how to fly. I'm going to teach you how to think. And you're going to learn. And there's a old Chinese proverb. It's I hear, I forget. I see, I learn. I do, I understand. And that's how he taught me how to fly, by listening, by seeing, and then by doing.
It sounds like something that we should all live by, not only in the cockpit, but also in daily life in our profession.
Absolutely. In fact, getting your pilot's license to me was the most incredible thing. And the process of doing it, the discipline, the mentality of it. And, aviation is a very unforgiving business. I mean, you can make a mistake and it's all over. And I applied the discipline and the rules of aviation into my everyday life. So I built my career off of, I was in the trucking business, and I become a well sought out national accounts executive based on building a territory that went from $1 million a month to $80 million, and based on discipline, the same discipline with aviation. Then when I ignored that discipline, years later, when I had my own truck company, I crashed it and burned. And I mean, it was the most horrendous thing ever since, of owning a business, and all of I call it the hell pit of entrepreneurism. And it really is a hell pit. And it was just devastating to go through that with $24 left over to my name. But again, life's about learning about failure. And the things I picked up about that, Heidi, is that, okay, airplane weight and balance is so important. Put too much weight in the airplane, it won't fly. Well, the same mindset is true with your life, weight and balance. If you're unbalanced in your life and you've got too much on your plate, you're not going to fly successful. And so that's what the book looks at. And it talks about using the metaphors of aviation with the benefit of improving your life and your life skills.
So that pivotal moment was your 2009 trucking business. I don't know if it was a complete flop or you needed to sell it, but how did you transition that failure into your current success, I guess?
It's really interesting because when the truck company crashed in 2009, it was the second most devastating thing I'd ever gone through. And Heidi, when you wake up and you've got $24 left to your name and you can't even get to it because it's frozen, that's a bad day. It really is. But I remember Dad, I had the most loving father. And one time when he was teaching me how to ride a bike, he took the training wheels off and he was holding the bike, and just so lovingly, he let go. And I was riding that bike. I was soloing. However, I was soloing straight into a telephone pole, and I hit that pole and fell over. And I just lovingly remember Dad picking me up, making sure I was okay, and say, "Okay, son, let's try this again." And that is what I did. But this time I was going to use aviation discipline to rebirth this business. And that's what I did. And so I built the business back from when we fell, we had 35 trucks. Okay. When I got out of bankruptcy, we had one truck left, a 900,000 mile jalopy of a truck and one trailer. And from that instance, I built the trucking business back, and it did great for years. But then again, life is a cycle. It's never clear skies 24/7, and the sky started getting cloudy again with the trucking industry. So instead of forcing myself to take that to the destination I wanted. In flying, you file alternate airports. Okay, if you can't make it to where you're going, then go ahead and fly to your alternate. And that's what I did. I put the company up for sale and moved on. And that's exactly and that's what I talk about in the book. If you can't get there, don't sacrifice everything to try to get there. Change direction, and it's okay to pivot. And that's what aviation taught me for so many years.
I think that's glorious that you have a plan B, or you're pivoting, evolving to your next version of yourself or version of another business.
Exactly. And you know, I'm going to tell you something, Heidi, I want you to think about this. If you, what's the most important thing in life as far as starting a business or going through college? You create a business plan or a goal, right? Well, a flight plan is that goal. It says, I want to go from destination A to destination Z, and here's how I'm going to get there. And everything in between is your route. Okay. And so when you use a flight plan type approach to deciding where to go in your life, you build in those waypoints. So instead of trying to get to Los Angeles, you may go from, say, first waypoint's Atlanta, next waypoint's Birmingham. You see what I'm getting at?
Yes.
And that's the beautiful thing about aviation discipline. You learn those little things.
So one of the reasons why I started the podcast was that I recently wrote my 4th book, but I leveled up in that book and I didn't write about myself. I interviewed others and wrote their inspirational, true stories of overcoming obstacles and overcoming tremendous odds and coming out the other side, bigger, bolder, wiser, a better
Right.
version of themselves. And once I hit publish, another person came up to me and said, I have a story. And I said, well, I just published the book. So I knew that there would be another version of the Look Up Global Stories of Resilience book. But then I started understanding how people consume stories now. And we're time starved. And the podcast format is a way that we can share time with someone in a half an hour while they're taking a walk with the dog or on the elliptical or the commute to work. So that is the reason why I've taken it from book to podcast. The first season were people that had contributed to the book. So that was just re-interviewing people that I already knew their stories. And now
Sure.
we're leveling up again in this season 2, where there's new people like yourself that I'm learning have just impressive, multifaceted hero stories that need to be shared to give others hope.
Exactly. Exactly. I love what you're doing, Heidi, because, you know, too many people who write books or do motivational speaking, they tend to paint a straight line to success. And life is anything but a straight line. It's more like being in a blender. You know, you ever remember that cartoon where the fish is in the blender and he just swimming as hard as he could get? Well, that's life. And that's the way it should be portrayed.
You're talking to someone who's right now in the blender. But
There you go.
this is why hearing your stories and the stories of others kind of keep me going and treading in that blender.
Yeah. Yeah, I tell you what, my other favorite one is the little mouse, and he's caught the bars, you know, and he's holding back the mouse trap. And the basic, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And so, to me, asking for help, looking for mentors, and that's the key to my life. Is you don't have to go this alone, and you can find if you and I can reach one person with looking up and finding a way out of whatever it is they're in, then we've done our job. And that's what I'm so happy to be on your podcast, is to be able to offer, you know, just my story. If it helps you, I'm honored.
So, the commonality that I've heard in the podcast and in the book when people have overcome these challenges is one, they said, okay, I've got to be in the moment. I've got to only focus on right now,
Yeah.
whether that's breath, whether that's in the cockpit and saving my life. And then the other was that they leaned into the power of community. No one did it alone, just like you
That's
were
right.
talking about mentorship and Scott and how he helped you turn a corner that has
Exactly.
influenced your life. So, in your own words, how could you explain how lookup is a portion of your story?
Well, you know, I'll tell you exactly how, because in flying, we have this thing, we call it aviate, navigate, communicate. So the first thing in an airplane, when you're in an airplane, is to fly the airplane. The second thing is, once you've got your airplane under control, figure out where you're going. Okay. And the third thing is, only then, after you've accomplished aviate, navigate, then you communicate. And so sometimes, so many times, when something comes our way, we start communicating or trying to figure out why uh, things are happening the way they are, versus just simply getting out of the issue. Perfect case in point, and in my book, I talk about Sully Sullenberger. Okay, a perfect example of, he aviated first. He lost both engines, low altitude. The thousands of hours of training kicked in. His sole intent was to fly the airplane first. And if he'd have said, "Oh no, we're going right back to," if he was to put navigate in front of aviate, he would have crashed, because he couldn't have made it to back to the airport to Newark. Okay, this the and then only once he had those two items in place, then he communicated, "I'm going to ditch it in the Hudson. I mean, brace for impact." And that is there's a way to do things. And so he took that, what could have been a total disaster, and turned it into an aviation miracle. And so the way I look at flying high, is it is looking up. It's taking the things you've learned in life, and looking into a positive direction. And I just want to say that asking for help is not weakness; it's wisdom. Okay. And so anybody that is going through a hard time, can't make it to where their destination is, don't go this alone. Reach out to your community, reach out to the people that love you, and say, "I need help." Look for a mentor. And that's what I think the looking up mindset is all about. It's about not going it alone. You don't have to go through life without having help. So it's a good thing. At the end of the day, we have to take care of our mind, our body, and our spirit to live a full and wholesome life.
So, what business endeavors are you pursuing or running today?
Well, I've got a internet service company, and that keeps me busy. It's service driven, because I'm really uh, I've learned through life, if you help people to get what they need, your reward is that. Okay. And so I provide internet services to rural communities throughout Georgia. And I mean, I just meet so many good people um, who benefit more than just internet. Back when COVID was going on big time, my wife would bake cakes for customers, and we still do. And I'd take cakes, or we'd go help people that couldn't get out of their house because of the illness. And so we become kind of entrenched in, really, that service to others is what really life to me means so much.
And you have instilled those aviation techniques, the checklists, and all of that into this business. And not only is
Every
it
day.
doing good, for others, but it's also doing well
For me.
for you.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. And, again, there's a Zig Ziglar wrote a book called See You at the Top. Now, I'm 68 years old. This book was out when I was a kid, but he really hit on a principle. And that principle was, if you help others get to where they need to be, your reward will come automatically because of that. And it's just like, and I'm sure it is for you too. You're an author, and I'm a much more experienced author than I am, but I'm not out to sell books. I'm out to get my story to people who can benefit from it. And that's what my mission at this point in my life is to tell my stories, to be there to help other people, and to be a mentor when the opportunity arises.
So where could people find more about you, Donald, and your books?
Well, my book is doing very well, flying high. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Ingram is doing the physical distribution to independent bookshops and what have you. You go to Amazon and type in Flying High, or type in my name, Donald R. Payseur. And also I've got a website, and it's flyinghighthebook.com.
Well, I thank you, Donald, for coming and sharing your story, or a snippet of your story, with us today. And I thank the viewers and listeners for tuning in. As we end every episode, it's with a toast to something that you can do whenever you want to, wherever you are. So here's to looking up
Here's to
and
looking up
flying
and
high.
flying high.
If today's story stirred something in you, if it reminded you that looking up is always a choice, I'd love to bring this message to your organization or community. I speak to teams, conferences, and communities on resilience, mindset, and navigating life's unexpected moments. I draw from my own experiences, the global stories in this podcast, and my latest book, Look Up: Global Stories of Resilience. If you'd like to explore having me speak at your next event, visit HeidiSiefkes.com/speaking, or just reach out directly. If you're enjoying the show, the kindest thing that you can do is share this episode with one person who needs to hear it today. Until next time, here's to looking up.